Why don't we, everybody else is good? Okay, I don't want to miss anybody. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, 7 o'clock. We'll begin with the pledge to the flag, which is over here, right?
Yes, behind us.
In all many forms.
In many forms.
All right.
Little forms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Is there any public comment? Not seeing any. We have minutes to approve from September 16th. So if everybody wants to take a minute with those, and then I'll need a motion and a second to approve the minutes from September 16th.
I move we accept the minutes of September 16th.
Okay.
And I did read them.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Okay. All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Good. All right. We have some warrants that need to be voted. We can take them as we have in the past, as kind of batches in the categories that they're in. So we have payroll. We have some food service, elementary, and secondary.
I move that we accept the payroll warrants 107 and 108.
Okay.
Seconded.
Great. And any other discussion about those? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, food service, 109, 113, and 113. I'll make a motion on those.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Elementary, 110, 111, 112, 114, 115. Make a motion on those.
So moved.
Yes. Sorry. I have a question for discussion when we get there, I think.
You have, I'm sorry.
A question for discussion on those ones.
Okay.
Well,
Go
second.
ahead.
I had a couple questions while reviewing warrants, and I'm pretty confident they were in these ones, and I forgot to write down the warrant numbers. I wrote warrant questions. There was a check out, for a translation services. I'm wondering what that was. Like, we sent letters out to get translated. That would be great. What are we translating letters?
So we have a new family in the building who speaks a different language as their initial language, and so we are providing them with all of our documentation and their native language, which is Haitian Creole.
My main question, that wasn't just like the warrant reads 2 letters translated, and it was just 2 like pieces of paper translated,
Yes.
or it was like a whole.
So 2 separate letters.
Okay.
One was the Title I document that we are required as a component of receiving Title I money, and the second one was a document, an internal document that we use as part of the Union 28, and again, it's something that we would have to submit to the state anyway.
So going forward, there'll be more of those translations, or are we using a different service, looking into a different service for it, or is it all going to be the same service?
So
company?
we actually can use both of these documents again next year and the year after, which is great, because they aren't the ones that change from year to year. So we won't have to repeat these particular documents. We will have from time to time interpreters who will come in. We actually had one in last Monday, and so there will be a bill for that. The closest Haitian Creole speaking, we did investigate. The closest Haitian Creole speaking person is part of the UMass services, which is what we're using. The state did put out a list statewide of people, but the cost attached to having someone drive out to do that would be prohibitive.
Perfect.
Often when something gets translated, and correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, it's done as like the letter, and then so that's a one cost to do that document, and then another cost will be for another document, and and that's how they kind of piecemeal
Love it.
Invoice it.
I just had never seen it before, so I was very intrigued by it and excited that we are, have new languages in the
Yeah.
building. That's kind of
Yes.
exciting, actually.
And I would encourage any public that knows Haitian Creole to come forward because they can work between this district and other districts around us. It is becoming certainly a need as that population grows in this area. So if you know that language, you definitely could have a nice side gig. So
That's good to
Come
know,
forward.
because I do know some people from. Let's see. Then let's see. We're still on elementary. I think that's all for at the moment. I think I'm good.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the elementary warrants. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And then we have secondary.
So if we approve warrants 1103 and 1104.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Shannon, are you aware of any gifts or?
No gifts and grants.
Perfect. We do not have a Gilmonte U representative at the moment, so we will move from there. Our tech representative, I believe, sent us, let me just call it up here.
There's a report on the new vet program.
Oh, great.
I'll have
You
to go
can't get it,
find
and
it.
I can't get it. Okay.
If you can get, well,
I cannot get it, unfortunately.
well, just a second.
have
There it is.
Oh, hey, if you don't
You
have
can
it
get
pulled
it?
up, I have
Yep,
it.
got
Oh,
it.
perfect. Okay.
Do. Wait a minute. Let me open it up. Newsletter. Good evening. What a beautiful fall weekend. Or do you want me to read it?
Yes, sure.
I hope folks were able to spend some time outdoors before the weather gets nasty and we turn the clocks back. Next Sunday, November 3rd.
Oh, wow.
That's good for me to remember. I have a meeting on the 5th. The fall sports season is winding down. Look for Mr.
Gamache.
I don't know.
Gamache. Yep.
Updates through email or Parent Square. We have a few teams still competing. Please consider attending a game. You can find schedules attached there. 9th grade students just finished their first exploratory rotation. 9th grade students seem to do a really nice job in their shops. I also want to recognize our 11th grade students for being leaders and mentoring many of our 9th graders. Noteworthy events, a lockdown drill, October 14th. I'm just skipping through some of these.
Yeah, that's right.
October 22nd, landscaping and horticulture students completed annual community service trip with First Light, supporting the Source to Sea cleanup effort. Tradeswoman of Tomorrow event at Jaduk Pack on Friday, October 24th. Guest speakers talked about their first experiences, and there'll be a couple of dates in the future. On Tuesday, October 28th, FCTS will host a Trek Tech event for students pre-K through grade 6. Tuesday, October 28th, 4:30 p.m. at the new Aviation Maintenance and Technology Hangar. Tuesday, November 4th, no school. This month we are highlighting our animal veterinary science program. View the attachment. Let's see. There's quite a bit to this.
You can just.
Well, no, most of it's the same. I don't see the just that part. Maybe it's somewhere back in the.
It's. I got it.
You got it?
Oh. No, I lied. I do. Okay.
So I know I am also in the email, and when I click on the attachment, it brings up the same letter. And then if you click on the attachment in there, it brings you to Parent Square, and then you have to sign into Parent
You have to
Square.
sign in. Yeah.
So if you don't have Parent Square, not very helpful.
So this is a newsletter that went out from the principal to all the parents, which is why if you're a parent,
You can see
you
it.
may have signed up.
And we are not.
And we are not. No. So they are highlighting their vet science program, which is exciting. And I just wanted to give a shout out. The FFA group is in Indianapolis at that huge conference that they go to every year. So that's super exciting for that group of kids. And having been a part of it for the last couple of years, I know how exciting that trip is. So yay for them.
If someone could mail Robin the report, we can link it in the minutes, and then you'll have it for reference instead of digging up.
Yeah, so we'll
Or you
need to
can
get
have that rep mail it
our rep,
directly. Yeah.
mail it, email it,
Email it, and then we can just link it so that if people want to, you don't have to go digging through multiple documents. Might be
Yeah, that would
easier.
certainly be helpful. And then also when it goes up on the website, if people want to see it from there, they can. So we'll have to get that adjustment made. Moving on, a collaborative for educational services. Kelly, was there a meeting that you?
There was a meeting.
Excellent.
It was fun. It really was. I learned quite a little bit. Like, I feel like I soaked in a lot of information. We met September 24th. Our next meeting is December 10th. We did officer and committee elections and appointments. I'm a warrant signer for them as well. They are currently undergoing an executive director and starting that search, which they are budgeting to hire a search firm for that. There was a long discussion. It was a very long meeting about who should be involved in the search committee and their roles and whether or not employees should be. So it was quite a long meeting. And then there was a couple discussions of current contracts that are kind of coming up and opening new contracts and things like that. It's definitely a whole new world for me. So it was a very long meeting with a lot of information that I took quite a bit of notes on. And I feel like I didn't get much out of all my notes, but a lot of things were repeated many of times. And it was a good experience for our first meeting. And it was very long, but it was very educational for me. They also, being part of that board, I also get like an extra training for their stuff. So I'm excited to sit in on that. I haven't done it yet. They sent me a link the other day to do. It's like a 40-minute training on collaborative education and stuff like that. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you. Regionalization update.
Also another fun meeting.
All right.
We met on, I thought I wrote down the day we met. Well, I didn't write that down, but the next meeting is November 4th. I was welcomed with open arms. They're very happy to have somebody from Erving back, just there listening, soaking it all in. They asked if I had questions along the way. Again, it was a lengthy meeting about where they are. They discussed a lot of the benefits and the key points that they're working on pushing forward. There was, the large decline, division, people moving out of New England, birth reduction rate, blah, blah, blah. On that one, post-employment benefits was a huge topic they kept bringing up. And then they brought up a lot that there was some negative news in public forums recently, but they kept talking about how it's with a lot of folks who haven't even reached out to them or asked them questions. It's just hearsay, and so there's a lot of negative, mostly they were talking about Facebook. There was a couple posts recently that were not in the favor of redistricting, but they all mentioned that none of them have ever been approached by the parents that were negatively talking. They voted to discuss that they are pushing back the deadline for voting. They're going to push all the towns into spring election voting for it. And then they also talked about how they all have to do it at the same time so that other towns aren't swaying other towns. That was something they kept bringing up, how they can vote in each town separate days and not have other towns intervening with how theirs is going. The grant that they've had for the last multiple years is running up in December on the 31st. They have funds still that they know where they're going. They're working with Adams Mail Service in Greenfield to get a final push of the new brochure that we also talked about at length in the meeting. Just rewording it and figuring out what it should and should not say. Overall, it was a lot of work. A couple other people have left, and now they're coming back because they feel like they have more work to be done in there, and be looking on the outlook for new brochures and mailings and such things like that. All in all, it was a good long meeting, very informative. And they did mention Erving in there, actually. They talked about how I had it written down in a nice little note, how they would be keeping our, like, how we are a part of them but not really a part of them, and that they would hold true to the contracts that we already have within them, and how their commitment to us wouldn't change anything at the moment, and things like that. So all positive, things that I think were important to talk about at their meeting. Yeah.
Interesting.
I was going to say, school committee in Northfield, I thought they voted against doing it.
I know that they didn't tell what towns have already talked about saying no, but they were saying how that a school committee has been giving them pushback, and they also didn't have a rep from Berniston for the last couple of meetings at all, so they're bringing somebody new in from Berniston. I'm not sure who that was. But yeah, they want to push past them and hopefully bring it to their town votes. There was a lot of information.
It will be interesting to see how logistically they figure out how to do that vote, because we all vote at different times.
Yeah.
Our town meetings are all at different times. So I'm kind of curious how they're going to figure that out. And yes, I had heard also that there were some
And Warwick
that votes
also,
had already been
as a
taken.
separate school district, had voted no.
I do think it's something that we really need to be looking at and thinking about as Erving, as to whether we want to continue with that tuition agreement. They seem to be open to the idea of continuing it as it is, but I think that we should really take a look and decide if that's still fitting our needs or not. That tuition agreement was created quite a long time ago, and our population, our town, everything has certainly changed since that was created, and I think this might be just kind of the opportunity we needed to take a look at it and decide if we really want to stay with what we have, if we want to tweak it at all. Even if this regionalization doesn't go forward, I think it's a good idea, like everything else, that we look at it and just see if it's still meeting our needs. So that might be something that we need to create a separate meeting for, just to focus on that, because that's certainly going to be, I think, a lengthy discussion. We're also going to need some outside guidance with our counsel, and so far the attorney that we use, the company that we firm, thank you, the firm that we use is also associated with the other school districts, so they cannot represent us. It's a conflict of interest, so we need to find an outside firm that will represent us for at least this particular issue that we have. One of the things that I will do when I'm going to the conference in Hyannis in the next couple of weeks is they often have several attorney there offering their services, so we can start to see what's available to us out this way and see who else we might be able to take on for at least this particular instance.
Would it, the town attorney is a separate
person,
firm, and maybe it'd be good to throw that question towards them to see if they are involved in that kind of work as well. Although you might come across, if they are, you would probably come across them at that conference.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, school, like everything else, people have their specialties, and so I don't know if the attorney we have for our town is that's one of their specialties or not. I don't know, but
yeah, it could be
it's
that
a question we could
firms
ask.
have different attorneys with different specialties.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing is that I think this is a good opportunity for us to reconsider what our position is. I'd like to do it independent of them, so that if they're willing to let things be as they are, then we don't have to engage with them while we figure out what we want. And we'll just let them deal with what they're dealing with, and then if we have another
I mean,
There we go.
we don't have voting rights anyway, so we couldn't really.
But we could come up with a
influence-
proposal and say, here, what do you think of this? But we want to decide that separately from them, just from my mind. And let them figure out where they come from. Maybe they'll come up with a proposal and they'll say, hey, how would you like to do this instead of where you are now? Although I get the impression that they want to let us be because they got enough.
That's
I
my
think,
impression.
yeah, I think so.
I think they've got bigger fish to fry. So,
Yes.
but like I said, I think this is a great opportunity for us to take a look at it and really think about whether it's still fitting our needs.
They are also, I have it noted, they're meeting with Desi on November 5th and 6th, and then Comerford
Yep.
Somebody
is
needs
meeting
a
with
Joe
them.
Comerford, yep.
Yeah, is on the 7th and supports and
A
is trying to
representative,
help
yeah.
with this whole redistricting as well.
Yep. Yeah, it will be interesting to see how this all plays out, and if this doesn't pass, what is the alternative? What's the plan B? So, yes, I think we are somewhat on the outside looking in, but we also do have, you know,
I think
we
it's
do have our
important
kids to
us-
think about.
Yeah, important for us to stay up to date on it. And if it doesn't fly because, one major school district or another pulls out or doesn't want to get in, they will eventually. I mean, I don't think these school districts are going to be able to function long term as isolated districts. They're going to have to pull together.
All right, thank you so much for that. And did you say there was another meeting scheduled or no?
Yeah, we're meeting next Tuesday, November 4th. Yeah, this meeting was quite a while ago. There's a fruit fly bug. So yeah, November 4th.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so capital planning committee. Do we want to, Beth, did you say that the blinds were in yours, or are we doing that as a separate?
It's a separate line.
It is a separate item. Okay,
New business.
I remembered somebody talking about something being folded in. And all right, so capital planning. I'm just gonna start with we do have a proposal for the blind project. Brian, our town administrator, has sent us over what the proposal is in language so that we can vote on it to move that project forward. Beth or Shannon, do you want to speak to it any more than that? Otherwise, I can keep going with it.
It's a project that went through capital planning, went to the town floor, was voted on, and now we just have a vendor that the town is recommending that we use, and so we'll need to take a vote to move forward. And I don't know if you want to wait to take the vote until it's under new business, or do you?
We can do that. Yeah, I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter. I suppose it's a capital planning issue, but sure, we can wait if people want to that. It doesn't matter to me.
Do we have anything else in the way of capital planning that was out there in the air waiting for us to deal with?
I think we have not had a meeting, so we don't have any.
Right.
In Beth's principal report, we have an update on some of the other things that were on last year's list, like the sidewalk and things like that. But new projects right now, we don't have anything yet, but we have not had a capital planning meeting yet.
Okay. I do know as we move into budget season, the town has historically asked us to have, a plan to present to the capital planning committee for what we're going to need, coming up maybe a year from now, 3 years from now, and that sort of thing. So if we can just start thinking about that and be ready for them for that. All right, so we'll talk more about that then as it comes up in the agenda, which is a little bit further down. No other capital planning discussions we need to have right now, so we'll move forward to the superintendent's report.
Alrighty. I know you have a copy of it that you can reference. Principal Gann and I have been meeting regularly to collaborate around EES planning and programming needs. The collaboration has been helpful in identifying strengths and areas for growth around EES instructional and operational practices. We've also been meeting with the Union 28 leadership that includes Amy Langdon, our Director of Student Services, who's here tonight, Director of Curriculum, Lindsay Rodriguez, and Caitlin Anderson-May, Director of Finance. Among the areas we've been diving into include instruction, special education support, budget and grants, and progress planning. It's been a useful and collaborative practice that has allowed us to leverage our collective expertise. And I want to thank Beth, because it can be overwhelming to have all of those people sitting in your office who all are bringing a different lens. And she came in mid-year last year and was just trying to keep everything afloat. And so she's really been very reflective, open, and has been student focused in all of our discussions. So I've appreciated that. And that's been a good system. We've used it in the other schools as I came into the first year. We're trying to expand on that. We had a lot of, last year when I came, I was sort of trying to steady the ship. And now we're really trying to dive into, okay, how can we improve operationally, instructionally in every school's in a different spot, but how we can bring all the Union 28 leadership to support principals in that work. And so that's been great to get that with a very receptive principal. So I've appreciated that. I was recently able to attend the EES open house and was excited to see welcoming classrooms. Excitement of students and their families was evident. The impact family and community engagement has on promoting strong student outcomes has been a repeated topic among the Union 28 leadership team, and with staff at the building levels. And events like open house are important in building the bridge among home and school. Beth are you going to talk about your? Yeah, she's got some updates, so I don't want to steal her thunder. Some Union 28 updates. We're at the beginning of the budget process across the Union 28 schools, and the first step in that process is to begin working on the Union 28 budget. We had our second JSC Budget and Personnel Committee meeting on October 20th. Among the issues we're grappling with are budgeting for technology needs and aligning our central office salaries with other Franklin County area schools. We anticipate that this upcoming budget season is going to be challenging at the municipal and state levels as we try to navigate educational funding volatility, municipal challenges that are occurring in the areas of insurance and funding. Insurance is an ongoing discussion. It has grown exponentially. And there was just a meeting yesterday with Joe Comerford, who's been a great advocate for this area. Erving, as a municipality and as a school, the Union 28 schools were all impacted by the Hampshire Trust. So that's something I've learned more about insurance than I ever wanted to, and it's still ongoing. The Union 28 schools, including Erving, took part in a shared professional development day known as Curriculum Day, which was held at Shutesbury Elementary. This was a day where we could come together and share our professional development needs and work with our positional counterparts among the Union 28 schools. We have to be intentional, given the unique structure of the union, to allow, they have great cohorts within their buildings, but when you want to talk to your grade level, counterparts about how are you tackling this instructional issue in fourth grade, they're sort of all on an island by themselves here, and so they really engage, the union staff and all the other staff really engage in some great discussions. We have a couple of those days, Wednesday afternoons we spend some time doing that, and I think it was really impactful. We always do surveys. We got some good feedback about the opportunities they had to work together and the presenters that we had. So that was great to see, and kudos. That is, all of the principals take a big part of that, but the bulk of the work falls on Lindsay Rodriguez, and she does a great job getting that off and going. So yay to her. Some legislative updates. The Haley Driscoll administration has announced some listening sessions to solicit feedback on the school funding formula known as Chapter 70. That is the primary program that establishes how Massachusetts distributes educational funding to cities and towns. The listening sessions are part of a Chapter 70 local contribution study, which I have linked in the agenda if you want to look at that, included in the state's fiscal 2026 budget, and it will be conducted by DESE in partnership with the Department of Division of Labor Services. These listening sessions will inform the final Chapter 70 local contribution study that examines methods to determine each municipality's target local contribution and their required local spending. So there is a formula that says how much towns have to contribute, and it is, Western Mass was very vocal in the last round of budgets. The formula has not been reviewed in 18 years. And we know that rural communities, especially out in Western Mass, our enrollment has changed substantially, but a cost of running the school doesn't change that substantially, right? It does somewhat, but if you have 150 students, you still need a principal, you still need to pay, you know, towards a superintendent. You might need fewer teachers, but some of those fixed costs are the same, right? Utilities don't change. But we're now having half of the enrollment not coming to us, and so it is, there's been some discussion about that there needs to be some sort of formula that accounts for a different rate for schools that have smaller populations. And that's one of the things that there's a pretty strong advocacy group among Western Massachusetts educational cohorts, and so they've been really advocating. The study will consider the impact on factors such as income and property wealth, the effect on municipal services, and the unique challenges of rural and regional school districts. They are expected to have a final report, which they will present to the governor at the end of the summer or at some point in the summer. They do have they have a listening session coming up next Thursday, November 6th from 4:30 to 6:30 at Greenfield High School. I will be attending that. And there's also a virtual session on the 18th. So I have provided the links to that so that you can inform yourself, take part.
The November one requires registration. I was just looking at my message.
November 6th?
The November
Or the virtual.
18,
Yeah.
the virtual one you need to register
Because
for.
they'll have to send you a link.
Right.
So
Just to comment that one thing you can do is get a hold of Senator Comerford, and you will get regular emails of things that relate to education
Yep.
or any other area of interest.
and you can certainly send, if you can't, you know, if you want to send testimony about how it impacts. I have shared the information. I shared it with the chairs, but I also shared it with the municipal partners, because what happens in small towns, as you know, right, where there's a finite pot and everybody's, you know, trying to get a piece of the same money. And so the school funding formula does impact the municipality's services outside of the school. And I know Brian is very up to date and keeping up with that. And I've shared it with all of the municipal school committee chairs also, but either select board or their town managers.
Yep.
And that's the end of my report.
All right. Great. Any questions? All right. Thank you. All right. We are up to the Director of Finance and Operations. Caitlin is not here. She sent along her report.
She had a conflict when we did the reschedule that she couldn't get out of.
Again, I'll say the only, one of the questions I still have while I hear, I brought it up at the last meeting, was the summer custodian, and so she, there is a response given that the additional summer custodial work was coming out of the substitution line, and it's been moved into the custodial salary line, and will budget for it moving forward accordingly. I'm just curious. This isn't new that we have summer help come in, so I'm still kind of confused as to why this would have been misappropriated to the custodial line when this isn't something new to us. We've done this for years. So
Did you send that question back to her?
well, so I will be
Okay.
sending that back, and
I will. I don't want to answer on behalf
no,
of her.
and I wasn't
so,
looking for you to answer. That's totally
she
fine.
Can speak to that. I don't know how it's been done in the past. I know, I don't think that there was a change in, like you said, I don't think there's a change in that we've had summer help.
Yeah.
I think it was just put in the substitute line rather than the salary line. I can't speak to what the rationale was around that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not historically done that way, because we would run in every single year to this problem of at the beginning of September having no custodial budget left for substitutes. So I do know that's not the way that it's historically been done. And again, it just makes me question why all of a sudden we're doing that way. It does not seem to be the proper way to manage that, to put it into a line that it really doesn't belong in, since it's not a new service for us.
So I do think going forward, it's going to be in the salary line. You can ask her about what the rationale was for putting it in the custodial line, but
Yeah,
she
the
said in her
subline.
response,
Yeah. And then there was a request made, the end of the year report.
Yeah, we need to take a vote to allow you to sign it.
Yeah, which I thought this was the thing that I had signed last time, but
No, that was the year before.
okay. So she's looking for us to vote to allow the chair to sign the certification page at the meeting. It goes to the town accountant.
She's already met with the town accountant. They've already gone over it together, and it's ready for signature.
Okay. So again, she's looking for us to take a vote to designate the chair to do that.
Could I move that we authorize the chair to sign the document?
Second.
Okay. Does anybody have any other discussions about that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm wondering if this is something that we can that we have to re-vote every single year.
That
Okay.
is remembering voting it last
Yeah,
year too.
we do have to do it every year because the committee could change its structure, and the person who was the chair last year may not be the chair this year.
No, but I'm wondering if we could do it as just the function of the chair. Whomever is sitting in that role, one of the functions of the chair is to sign this document. That's all I'm
I think it
wondering
gets
about.
voted every year, but I mean, that's been the standard practice, not just in the union schools, but in other schools I've been at.
Okay.
I don't know if it could be. That would probably be a question for Adam. And I can certainly add that to when we have regular check-ins to see
Just
if that's
something to think
that's
about.
done.
Again, as a function of the role, not as the function of the person sitting in the role. Particular person. Okay, so I will go ahead and take care of that. All right, and there was mention of a couple of things that we need to be working on as far as
District maintenance of effort. I don't understand those lines, those areas, those two areas.
speak
If
to
someone
that?
could explain them to me.
Sure. So every year we have to certify to the state that we have maintained the amount of money that we're spending on students with IEPs. And there are some exceptions that you can make. So, for example, if a special education teacher is making, say, $90,000 a year and they retire, and you hire someone in new at, say, $50,000 a year, we're technically spending $40,000 a year less on students with disabilities, but that's an exception that the state will allow. So there are a number of those kinds of exceptions that the state allows that we just have to sort of go back in our records and figure out exactly why we aren't spending as much on students with special needs. But it's generally those kinds of things where it's not really that we're spending less, it's just that something cost less than the year before.
Thank you.
Do you want to speak to any more about the second bullet point, the one that we're not meeting?
Oh, I don't have that in front of me. If you tell me what it is.
It says the district did not meet maintenance of effort for IDEA. We do qualify for a few exceptions, and the state has already been notified of them. We are preparing documents to support the exemptions, sorry,
Yep.
so that we are ready when the state asks for them in the spring. Is that something that you could speak to? And if not, that's fine.
Yeah, no, it is one teacher that moved position and we hired it at a lower rate. Actually, there were 3 of those positions: special ed, school psychologist, and maybe only 2. So that was a chunk of it. We also
we're expecting that we will spend less money on our contracted services this year because we paid for the school psych that we didn't have out of the contracted services last year, and now we have a full school psych, so that looks a little bit different. There may be one or two others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but we have Caitlin and I have a running list so that we, because I had to do that a few weeks ago with the IDEA funds, and so I know what I had to do as an exemption, and so I've just sort of kept that list, and so she'll do it too when she recertifies.
Okay. Any other questions about that? And we have our expenditure reports in the packets as well. All right, so we're going to move forward to the principal's report.
Well, could I raise
Sure.
one issue
Oh, yeah.
for
Before we go back. Before we go on.
report of expenditures? At the last meeting, to make it a little more, a little easier to read this long report, I had asked that the account description line be floating. And at the meeting, I believe Caitlin just clicked and it was. But the one that came out, if I get halfway down the page and I'm in account year to date and I have forgotten that I'm in account year to date, I have to go back to the top because she didn't do it. And, so that the account description needs to float, if you know what I mean. And I actually had somebody with much more experience with spreadsheets try and do it for me, and she couldn't even undo it because it's all locked. And that was my only comment after going through it all.
Okay. All right. So, principal's report.
Thank you. So we're going to start with enrollment. We have welcomed 2 new students to our building. We've brought in an additional year 3, 3-year-old school choice student. We are very excited about. And we have a move-in to town, which has added a 2nd grader to our building. So we are now at 108 students as of the 13th of this month. You can see we have some updated photographs we're really excited about. Took a little field trip over to the library and the Morris Hill, which I'll talk about in a moment. The school council has continued to have our meetings. We have finalized our draft of the school improvement plan and action steps, and we look forward to presenting that next month, but it is ready to go. Additionally, we have a calendar of meetings and completed that. And then the next Monday, we begin budget discussions and recommendations as a member of our council. So we have our first budgeting meeting to discuss what the recommendations are. Our family and community engagement, usually my item 4, has been shifted because we're talking about data, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. But we have a number of items here that I want to include. We've done several walking trips to the field trip, to the walking field trips to the library. It's been wonderful. I think that the collaboration with our library here in Erving is an incredible opportunity for us, and I'm incredibly thankful for the librarians there and all that they do. So we have a story walks there, and it's just been really great. Gilly does a good job of providing us with information regarding which story walks are going up, and we had one today for 1st grade, so it's been pretty consistent. Our 4, 5, 6 went to UMass for the multi-band. That was incredibly well received for the kids. They just enjoyed it wonderfully well. And our 5th grade went to Morris Hill and did 2 days of, which you can see, the climbing on the right here. They learned a great deal about how to interact and support each other. It is a very good focus for how we support other people through difficult things. So I'm excited that we do that. Last week we had Erving Fire Safety Week. The Erving Fire Department was tremendous in planning for and providing fire education for our students. I am very thankful. The dog was incredibly well received. Not a live dog, a person in the dog costume. But the kids were thrilled to see the dog costume. So that was great. I do want to, and this was Shannon referenced this as a part of the capital planning conversation earlier today. Earlier this summer, it was identified that we have failed, the sidewalk has failed in several areas. Brian and Glenn have worked very hard to figure out how to address this. It will be a patch issue at this time because of the time of year, and we would not have the ability to pull up all of those failed areas and push them through. We also need to address some ADA compliance issues with them as well. So they can do a patch on this, and I can put the order through, and it would be, and actually by doing it during the school week instead of on the weekends, we could save $2,000. So I really appreciate Brian and Glenn and all of their efforts to try to get this addressed so quickly, and to be able to maintain a town property so that we're safe for anybody who comes here and needs to be able to use our sidewalks. So,
do you have a timeline for that?
Actually, I'm going to sign off on it tomorrow, and it's going to have to happen in the next couple of weeks because it's got to be done before it gets too cold.
Oh, yeah.
And so my understanding is that it probably will happen within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yes. Next Tuesday is our first of our family curriculum nights. It is our ELA curriculum night, and we are really hoping to have a great turnout. We have 3 different zones of activity, and each zone has 2 different sessions. So families with a kindergartner and a 5th grader or a 1st grader and a 5th grader can go to 2 different things, one for each child. We have in pre-K and K, we have activities that are specifically targeted where the parents or grandparents can come in and work with their child that night on things that will help them with literacy development. We have literacy gaming in grades 1, 2, and 3. And so we have 2 sessions of that people can choose to opt into. And in grades 4, 5, and 6, we have a writing session, and we have a reading session that will give parents an opportunity to how they can support their children at home. And so we're really hoping to have a big turnout. It will be running from 5 to 6:30 on Tuesday. This again is the first of several nights. We'll have a math, a science night coming later in the year. We'll also have at the end of the year, an arts night. And this is in conjunction with all of the other, curriculum and technology nights that we're having this year. So there's a big focus. Every month there will be something that will allow us to be able to outreach to families and to give people an opportunity to better support their child. We have our traditional Veterans Day assembly at 10 a.m. on the 7th. We are very excited about that. And so I'm looking forward to being a part of that. And then on the 10th, we have our first CPAC feedback session. It's at 8:30 in the morning till 9:30. Amy will be here to be able to talk to families, answer questions. We're hoping to have a big turnout from that as well. So right around drop-off time.
Is there any sort of exit ticket for the ELA curriculum night to get feedback from parents about how the night went or suggestions for the next one or that sort of thing?
Yes. So we'll have a little QR code, and people will be able to scan the code and give us feedback about which sessions they chose to attend. Because again, Kelly might choose to go to one for 1st grade and one for 4th grade or 5th grade, and we want to be able to figure out which ones were best attended. And what kind of splits do we have, and then also which things they might want to see when we do the math one, which actually is the next one coming up.
And I just wanted to give a piece of feedback. I
Yes.
was happened to be in the library doing my own personal library things, and I was talking to the librarians, and they were saying how much they appreciated the school coming over and how nice it was to see the kids coming over as frequently as they were. So
that's great.
They certainly appreciate it too, and I think it really does help to build that bond between the school and the library, and hopefully those kids will continue to be library users in the future. So
Agreed. I'm fairly excited about it. And actually, to that end, Abby and I were able to do a presentation, our first in a series of 4, related to Half the Story. Half the Story is a social media curriculum that we are using with our grades 5 and 6 students, and it's an opportunity for us to really focus, the idea of digital habits and intentional choice making for our kids. But we wanted to make sure that parents also had a chance to get to learn some of what we were going to be teaching, and why we felt it was important. So much of the social emotional wellness that is out there right now talks about the impact of social media on students in both middle and high school, and around depression and around emotional well-being. And so this is a chance for us to help kids to understand and gain perspective about what a curated lifestyle looks like versus an actual lifestyle, and what those choices are. One of the things that we did during the first session was we taught everybody how to go in and see which apps they use and how much they use that app on any given day. Which can be a little startling that first time you look at it. I know the first time I looked at it, I was like, ooh, that is not the number of minutes I was hoping I was using my phone. So that was the first in a 4-part series. The next one is in January, and Abby and I are excited to run that one because that is about digital detox. So right aligned with the first start of the year, kind of making some New Year's resolutions about spending a little less time with technology and a little more time with the people who are around us. So, and that segues us into the bulk of my presentation for this evening, which is about our data. I would like to begin by talking a little bit about the state data and where the context for that is, and then it will slide into what our own data is. So 2025, the MCAS data has still, for statewide, has still not reached pre-pandemic results. And as a result of that, the state is looking at what types of levers can be used to be able to try to make that change happen. So specifically, 42% of students in grades 3 to 8 met or exceeded the goals, and only 41% met or exceeded in math. Science results do vary. The state is focusing on early literacy and chronic absenteeism to improve scores. And the MCAS does remain an important measure of how students and districts are doing. It is our report card, and it's something that I've had a lot of conversations about with my staff this year. If you look at the state level, 42% is still 3 points below it's a 3-point increase, I'm sorry, but it is still 10 points below the 2019 data statewide. And in math, there was really no change from 2024, and they are 8 points below the state average in 2019. Science, the 5th graders scored at 46%, which is a 1-point increase, and we are closing that gap. We are down to only a 3-point difference from the 2019 data. So we're looking at making some real improvements in science, I think is good statewide. I'm going to start by talking about the biggest area of growth for our school. Many families received an October 1 letter from me, and it talked about chronic absenteeism. There were 3 letters that went home. Letter number 1 was a congratulations letter because I had several children who were identified as chronically absent in the 24-25 school year, and this year have no absences. And so I wanted to highlight that for them, and I have little prizes in my office and tried to make sure that they understood how happy I was for them. Chronic absenteeism is 15 or more days in a school year. Warning signs would go between 10 and 14 days. 9 or fewer days is the expected number of absences by the state. Our 2024 rates, you can see, hovered in the 15 range. We had a couple at low-income students at 14.6. Our white is our only demographic racially, and that was at 13. Unfortunately, the 2025 data went up in every category and went up significantly. So because we declined, we received 0 points across all areas of attendance. And you'll see how that plays in the report card in a moment. The targets were supposed to be from 15 down to 12.9 overall, and we went up to 19.8. The most common misconception about this is who is impacting part of these numbers. So absenteeism, unlike the MCAS test, is all students in the building. So kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all impact our ability to have these results. 33% of grades K and 1 were chronically absent last year. And so those numbers absolutely hurt us as a school. The reality is that when kids aren't here, we can't teach them, and the data nationally that shows what the impact is pretty significant. So children who have good attendance in grades K and 1, which is 9 or fewer days, are 64% more likely to be reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. If children are at risk, that's the 10 to 14, they're at 43%. As we move chronically absent one of those years, nationally a number they use is 18 days, it's 41%. The biggest issue are students who are chronically absent in both K and 1 are only 17% likely to be able to read on grade level exiting grade 3. It's just a significant issue. And so we really are pushing this year to be able to support having our children here, everything from being healthier and making sure we're hand washing, to really highlighting to families that, unfortunately, when we choose to schedule a vacation during the school year, it does impact our ability to teach them because they're just physically not here in the building. Questions about attendance?
What does happen when somebody is absent? Is a phone call made home?
So most times our families call us and let us know. I took one call this morning and yesterday morning as well when I came in. So our families are fairly good. If a child is not here and we don't get a phone call, we will check in on that as well. Sometimes if we know ahead of time, because if we sent them home with a fever today, we're not expecting them in tomorrow. We're not going to make that call. But what my process is I reference the letters. We had a letter sent. We also had a letter sent home that you are in danger of being chronically absent this year. You have exceeded 5 days. And when you exceed 5 days, we're going to be having a meeting in my office, and we're going to be talking about action steps that we can do to support you. Additionally, I sent home a letter the third letter was to children who were chronically absent, identified as chronically absent last year, and are already in danger this year of being chronically absent because they've had 3 or more days during the first. I've held 2 meetings already with families, and the November 1 letters will go out next Monday, and I anticipate we'll be having some more meetings as well.
What about positive things? You said what you did with individuals who had not had any absences at this point, right?
So it was anyone who was considered chronically absent last year who were at 0 or 1.
Yeah, I mean, is there what other recognitions, awards, as it were, for not having absence?
So we are going to be doing we're scheduling monthly assemblies, and our November one will be coming up, and we're going to be talking with children about attendance there as well. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be highlighting all of the kids who have been coming to school and are not identified as chronically absent. It is a way for us to celebrate them. And then I would like to do something as we get deeper into the year, as kids continue to be below the curve. Yes.
I mean, the cookies got me here. I mean,
unfortunately, I can't give out food, so I give out these little squishmallow thingies there that are little squishy things that kids love. So, and pencils.
I do want to. It's a little bit different at elementary, right? High school kids are often they're their own, right? They're the ones you have to get on board, right? Like, you got to get to the bus, you got to get up. in elementary, this is a conversation, and it's never an easy conversation. So I applaud Beth for really addressing this with a systemic thing. This is an adult culture shift. It's difficult conversations with adults about you need to get your child here to school every day on time. Because if kindergartners are chronically absent, that's not a kindergarten problem, that's a parenting problem. And I know that's not a very popular thing to say, but let's call it what it is. And so this is about engaging families with, this is how we do school here at Erving. And if your child is absent, you have to come in and meet with the principal so that we can get a plan of how can we support you in getting the child. And we want to partner with that. But I have a double-edged feeling about giving awards for attendance at the elementary level, because we are punishing kids who often have no control over whether they're here or not.
Right.
And so, not that we can't, but I want to balance that. And it doesn't always make me the most popular person in the room. I recognize that. But when we have kindergartners and first graders who are not showing up at school, that is not a kid problem. That's an adult problem.
Okay. Yep.
Could I ask a couple things about that? Are the statistics that show chronic absenteeism, K in grade 1, result in less than grade level reading at grade 3? Are those our statistics, or are those state or nation national?
So those are nationwide, and
Okay.
it comes from an organization called attendanceworks.org, which is really nationally recognized as the leader in research around the impact of attendance on student performance.
And this is not just an Erving problem. I want to be clear about
Yeah.
that. We have seen attendance across the Commonwealth and the country dip off with COVID, right? And I do empathize with parents, because you're kind of in that tough spot with, my kid has a fever, I've got to keep them home. And, you know, that COVID, you know, your kid is sneezing. You know, I have 4 kids. My kids went to school with tissues when they were sneezing, right? And we live in a different time where people are a little more sensitive to that. So it's a fine balancing act for parents, and I recognize that. But it's a problem nationally. And what we've seen is we had those gaps caused by COVID school closures, right? And we know that kids didn't have equitable access, whole bunch of things. And now they're missing, 28% of, and this is an Erving statistic, 28% of our high needs students are chronically absent. So that's over 1 in 4 are absent, and they're the students who most need to be here because they are having difficulty or they have barriers to accessing the curriculum. And so that's where, and I'm glad that Beth chose to lead with attendance, because, you know, we're going to talk about some performance data. It's not going to be a warm, fuzzy conversation. It's, you know, but this is a big part of how do you improve, you know, student outcomes? Well, we have to look at everything. We have to look at the quality of instruction, the quality of the materials that we're using, but it is a partnership with families, and that's the message I want families to know. But we can't teach them if they're not here. And if you have a student who's missing, you know, 1/4 of their year, that's a big gap to try to fill in.
Have you been able to, and I know you've only had a couple of these meetings, so maybe we'll ask again in the spring, have you been able to kind of ascertain from parents what the barriers are? Is it simply just we went on vacation, or I was afraid with the sniffles, or is there something else that is causing? Is there a transportation issue? Is there, you know, is there something else?
Yeah. The 2 meetings I've had this year, I had one last year that was when we have. So context is everything. Part of the reason why I led with this is because this is an issue with our younger students far more significantly than with our older ones. I had one meeting last spring with a student between grades 4, 5, and 6 about attendance. And that was solely I like to stay up at night, play video games, and then I'm too tired to come to school. And that was one child in my targeted MCAS grades of 4, 5, and 6. We had a significant larger number because the range of chronic absenteeism isn't just the 15 days that the state would like us to be below. We had children that were mostly in the grades K and 1 who were ranging anywhere from 22 to 38 days that they were missing. Sometimes it's a combination, and this is really where the issue becomes, is that it's a combination of a vacation and an illness. And then there are days where the child is, tired, and, the parent's like, well, I'm just not sure. It's difficult to send them. They're little kids. It's hard to, get them to get up in the morning sometimes if they're tired. And so I think it's about the conversations I've had for the 2 children I've already had meetings on this year. In both cases were about a lack of desire to get to school, and we've created a plan to be able to help support that. It was not a situation of true illness. I will also say that the state is not forgiving when it comes to attendance. We had a child who had a significant medical issue last year, and the state didn't excuse that.
They're either here or they're not.
They're here or they're not.
I've run into that myself. Yeah.
And so it's sort of one of those things where I need to be able to have some hard conversations and say that I want to be able to teach your child, and I want to be able to help your child learn and grow, and my teachers are incredibly hardworking and want the same thing, and we physically need to have them here to do that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've been in early childhood my entire career, and I do agree and echo that thought of younger students. Sometimes the kind of mindset is, they're little, it won't be a big deal if they stay home, and not really understanding that that's where the foundation is being built. And if you don't have that strong foundation, you can't possibly build onto it. So yes, missing kindergarten is a big deal. Yes, missing first grade is a big deal. Missing any of the grades, but certainly those younger grades. And then my other thought is 2 other thoughts. One, has there been a discussion about retention? If children are simply not here enough days to learn the curriculum, are they going to be able to move on to the next year? And has that ever been thought of as a part of a conversation with parents to say they may not be able to move on with their peers if they are not here enough days to learn what they need to learn to master the skills to move on? And then secondly, I'll put my second thought out there. Is this something that teachers talk about at parent-teacher time? Like, are they making parents aware when they're sitting with them one-on-one that your child has missed X number of days, and here's why that's a problem? Here's what, from a very much of the teacher point of view, here's what they're missing in my classroom when they're not here.
So I can actually answer both of those. One of the meetings I had last spring did include the potential for retention, and I had a long conversation about it. We set a goal for the springtime. The meeting was held in January, and I gave no more than 3 additional sick days through the course of the entire spring, and that if it exceeded 3, it would be an automatic retention. And the child was able to get to school from the end of January through the end of June, and not missing any more days. So we were able to support that child in getting the child here. But retention is something that we have a conversation about. One of the things we try to talk about is that in middle and high school, you don't get credit for the course if you don't attend enough days.
Yeah.
And so that's the context we provide to kids, is that there's going to be a minimum amount of time that you need to have in the classroom to be able to meet the standard in middle and high school. And we need you to be able to be here as well so that we can be teaching you. To the other side of your question, what I will say is that I've taken on a big chunk of the messaging about this. However, one of the things that you'll see is we have developed a student success plan as a part of our school improvement plan. Teachers have already begun working on them, and they will be using those as a part of conferences. And the second or third line down on the student success plan talks about attendance. So it's front page. It's before the kind of like the old phrase of the back in the newspaper days. It's before the fold. It is one of the very first things. It's above the fold. We're talking about attendance. And so when parents are having an opportunity to see the student success plan for their child and talk with their teachers about student success plan, it will include attendance.
I wonder also about, community support and community services support for both individuals and also just support for education as a whole that would be reaching out to them at all other areas of their lives saying, school is important. Erving School is a really good place to go and a good fun time to be there, and I'm not thinking so much about the community services side of the stick,
Right.
but
The resource.
just the whole Erving and what we have here.
But hopefully, as we, under Beth's leadership, as we're able to build those relationships with the library, with the fire and police, like it becomes more of that whole village. And my understanding is that Erving Elementary operated much as a silo and didn't really utilize the partnerships that were available that can build that relationship and when there are things going on at the library and things like that where students just feel connected to their community, and their parents feel connected to the community. I think that's a big piece too.
I think that probably if you sat down with police, and maybe you have, they know who comes to school and who doesn't already.
Good time. I had a couple thoughts and a question.
Yes.
I'm not questioning the people who do the study, the national study. I don't know them. I just make any assumption they know what they're doing. But perhaps if you equate kids who are absent K and 1 a lot, and then they are not at grade level of 3, is it just because of being absent, or is there some other variable? And I've seen this in my grandchildren who are grown now, but I've seen it when they were little. They were in the first grade, and there were kids whose parents had not taught them. They didn't know A from a 3 or red from blue. And other parents are very conscientious, taught the kids all kinds of stuff. They ought to be in the 3rd grade when they entered the 1st grade. May have something.
It's one variable. It's certainly not all variables.
Yeah. Okay.
It's certainly not the only variable. I mean, the reality is sometimes we have a student comes in and they're
Sure.
just they didn't show up, but they're still on target, and so it's one variable. I think there's a lot, some we can't control, right? And so
sure.
I think we're trying to look at what are some ones that we can really have some influence on.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get to my point here, is not to belittle the people who do the
Sure.
study, but there are other perhaps variables,
Absolutely.
and perhaps a way to address them, maybe you already do. When people show up here at pre-K, let's say, you've got kids who don't know anything. They're little, they're 3 years old or something. What do they know? And something at that point. And once you're at 3rd grade, you can't go back and fix. You can't teach them faster. So so like when you're tired, you can't sleep faster because you don't have much time. So if when they're first coming in here, if the parents are educated, that how important this is. Here's the statistic nobody probably ever told you, but if your kids are not here, K through 1, here's what's going to happen. They're not going to read well at grade 3. Nationally, happens all the time. It's not just here. It's not we got poor teachers. This is what happens. If the parent is impressed on how important it is to get the kid here, they may or may not do it, but at least make the attempt to impress on them how important that is. I think you have more likely chance of succeeding to make it better at grade 3 when you do that. I don't know how else you would address it. Maybe we already do.
So actually, this exact flyer that I show up here was attached to my letter that went home. And my letter did discuss the impact of physically being here and the opportunities that we can present as teachers when a child is physically in the building. So we tried to provide access to the data nationally, as well as what we want to be able to do to support their child's learning every day they show up in the building.
I still think the first time they walk in the door,
Agreed.
just saying to them, hey, we need to let you know something. Your kid's going to fail if you're not teaching them an A from a 3, and you don't get them here to learn. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's a really important point that you make that we talk about preschool, because all of these studies are done most of these studies are done, I'm not going to say all, K through, right? Because K is when education is mandated for you to be in school. But preschool, we have them. Like, and they're kind of, that's where they're starting those routines in the morning of getting up and getting dressed and getting your breakfast and getting out on time. And if we are not impressing those structure on them, if they don't have them already, if we're not helping them develop those good habits, then they're not going to do it in kindergarten, and they're not going to do it in first grade, and they're not going to do it in second grade. So I do think preschool is really that kind of untapped time that we don't often, statistics don't really include preschool, but they really should, because that is really where you're going to start
They should.
putting down these.
And to the superintendent's point, at that age, it's not the kid's problem. Kid does whatever
Right.
they bring them and leave them here. It's a parent education. Let's call it a problem. It's an issue to be dealt with. If the parents are willing to listen. And I think a lot of parents, they care about their kids, and,
Very much
and,
so.
and if they're told, if you don't get them here when they're really little, because I think, the kid's over there, what are you going to teach them? Color with a crayon or something.
Right.
But show them the result happens if they don't get them here. Many, if not most, if all parents would really care.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I would agree.
Just my thought. So.
So our report card data, here's where we are at. As I mentioned at the bottom, we had 0 points out of 4 for all attending students and 0 points out of 4 for our lowest performing students in attendance, and that's why I led with chronic absenteeism. We don't get high school scores, obviously, so we skip that category. I'd like to start with achievement, and then we'll talk about growth. We had an all student score, and we have a lowest performing students. Lowest performing students are a combination of children who in previous years had done poorly on an MCAS test, and the state identifies them for targeted intervention and support, and then we as a school are responsible for ensuring that they are able to be successful. The lowest performing students in this building, many of them, and you'll see, it's okay. You'll see on the coming pages, many of the reasons why we got points in that category are low income students in town did well, and we were excited about that, and our special education students as well. And so we were able to get 3 out of 4 points for English language arts and 2 out of 4 for math. Unfortunately, we had for all students, which is the collective and it's not just the lowest performing, we were at 0 out of 4 for ELA and 0 out of 4 for math, which has been a very big portion of our conversations this fall with the teachers. And we spent a really big time digging into who those students were and putting faces to the data. As we look at growth, we were at 2 out of 4 for ELA and 2 out of 4 for math, and that's at typical range is what they identified us as, and you'll see that on the next slide. Again, our lowest performing students, 3 out of 4 for ELA and 2 out of 4 for math. So this is our overall report card. And as I dug in deeper with the teachers is what you'll see next. And I think that's sort of more meaningful because it allowed us to really look at what matters most, which is where are we with our students. We were able to move some good aspects. The state average is 20% of students who are not meeting the MCAS. We were at 11 across grades 3 to 8. We were closing the gap between the total overall score. We're now just 3 points below the state averages, which is a 494. We're at 491. We are at and what I talked with the teachers about is that the state average for passing for a meeting is 34. We are at 32. Our problem is there is a 7% average of students scoring exceeding, and we are at 0. And so we need to talk about who in this large 56% of kids who are progressing could be targeted immediately for moving in. And we actually identified kids who are, within less than 10 points. And I'm trying to message this important fact that this is not just one test. This is an all-year effort to get kids to be able to, one, understand the grade level standards, and then 2, understand that with a point of pride, they should want to show what they know. We're going to spend all year long teaching them to the grade level standards and pushing for any child who's below grade level to be a year and a half of gain in a year's time. And that's the messaging I have been using with my staff, is that a year and a half of gain in a year's time, because we can't afford to continue to lose ground. A simple year's gain in a year's time means they continue to be behind. So it's about targeting, how do we move kids who are sitting in this progressing category here into meeting, and how do we move kids who are meeting into exceeding?
You want to go first?
Sometimes I say things that aren't popular either.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Well, we can be in a club.
and if the state average, say, is 32, roughly,
Yeah.
is this out of 100?
So this is the meeting is 500, and the state average currently is 494. So the state average is not meeting at this point, and that's what the initial context I was talking about, where the state average is below where it was in 2019. This is why that plays out.
But this is a percentage. Is that what you're asking?
Well,
These are-
yeah, and the numbers, to those who don't understand, and I'm one of those,
Understood.
can be misleading. You know, when I hear the state average is 33 or 34, and we're 32, look, we're not doing too bad. We're close to the state average, but is it 32 or 33 out of what? 33 out of 100, the whole state's failing.
Right.
No, and that's
And-
exactly.
And that's correct.
You hit it
But
exactly.
what I'm going to
Yes.
say is that regardless of what I've had the conversations with the staff, is that regardless of what the state average is, 56% of our kids in the progressing category is too many of our kids simply progressing. We need to move the bulk of those students immediately into meeting, and we need to then target the ones who are just coming out of not meeting and are at the low end of
Hang on, let's let you go, and you go.
at the low end as moving them in another year. So it's sort of I call it the baton pass, is that all of the kids who are within a certain range have to move now. And all of the kids who are at the very bottom end of progressing, they need to move as far as they can this year to get to the top of meeting or the top of progressing. And then the next teacher I pass the baton to needs to move them the rest of the way.
Yeah. I think it's also important to note that when we talk about the state average, that is all of those schools also that their budgets are stripped to the bone and they don't have enough pencils to go around, along with schools like Erving Elementary who have an enormous amount of materials and services at their disposal. So the fact that we have this amazing budget, we want for nothing, we have amazing curriculum, we have amazing supplies at our disposal, and we still can't make at least meeting expectations. I mean, we should all be horrified by this, quite honestly. What else is there? We can't keep throwing money at this. It's clearly not a money issue at this point because we have plenty of it. So,
Right, but I think statistically, so does the Commonwealth, right? Like, I mean, to your point, Irving has a lot of resources, but this also factors in communities like Weston, right, and Lincoln, who have even more resources than we do. So I think this isn't where we want to be. It's not where the community wants us to be. It's not where the leadership. It's not where the teachers want. So now we're really all focused on, so what are our steps, right? And how are we going to get there? And I know I don't want to steal your thunder, but this is where we are, right? We're not going to sugarcoat it, but now we have to figure out like what are the incremental steps, and how are we going to measure so that we don't want to wait until next MCAS to say, how do we do? Right? And so we have we have some plans about progress monitoring and making adjustments to practice. But it also is an expectation and culture shift all the way around, right? Because we are not far from the state average. And so, right, that feels like well, we're doing better than, friends from over here and friends over there. But the problem is, and as a state, we should not be satisfied.
That's
34%
my
of our-
point.
34% of our students in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has the best testing results in the country are 34%. So I think that is a much bigger issue, and we could sit here till 11 o'clock talking about that issue. But what we want to do is show you this is where we're at, and this is our plan for improved outcomes.
I have a quick question on it. And again, I have abnormal children, which some of us may know that my children are not normal. And so my kids and I discussed MCAS scores. Like we sat down, we looked at their scores, we looked at how they did last year, we talked about improvement. Are the students and the teachers all being shown these facts? Like I know first graders don't. Zoe understands that there's numbers on a piece of paper and the line graph she kind of gets. It's first grade. But when I sit down with my fifth grader and I see like, this is how you're doing, this is where you're at, this is where you should improve with, he understands like, oh, that means I should be working. Are the at least older children's teachers discussing these with the kids at Erving?
So actually, it's one of the things I want to talk about in a moment.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Sorry.
So but what I will say is that a good example of what you're talking about is actually in each grade for grades 3, 4, 5, and 6. I printed out copies of all of the released essays that children wrote, and I provided the third grade teacher all of the kids from last year. Here are what the third grade essays are. She has whited out the names, and we are going to be spending the days talking about with kids, how do you go from what was written as a sample, because none of those children are still in third grade. How do you go from what was written as a sample to what actually answers the question? How do you remain on topic? How do you identify things in the reading that help you to answer the question? What does a sufficient answer look like? Because one of the biggest areas within the data that we identified was that we are not writing to the prompt, one, and not only are we not writing to the prompt, but we're not writing enough when we are writing to the prompt. I'm guessing in fifth grade you'll see copies of it. There's been an enormous push with our fifth grade teacher and giving kids a really clear set of instructions. They've already written 3 previous essays, and they were given copies of their fourth grade results and got a chance to see like, hey, this is what I wrote, and this is the score I got out of 7 potential points, and this is why that score, like, what do you think is the reason? And having that conversation. And by giving them also a copy of whited out names of the kids who were in fifth grade last year, they can see and correct what a fifth grade essay should look like to the degree that it then becomes a 5 or a 6 or a 7. We want to have as much opportunity to correct our writing as we possibly can, because that really was one of our biggest areas of struggle on ELA, was we just did not do well in writing. And that's one aspect of the things that we're talking about, is getting kids to stay on topic and to write with enough evidence for that topic to make it meaningful.
Yeah, I look at I look at our class numbers, and we don't have 25, 30 kids in a class, right? Which both helps us and hurts us. It cues us, of course, when we have a small pool, then percentages, of course, will come larger. So when 1 or 2 of a small pool has a bigger impact than 1 or 2 of a large pool. But when you have such small classes, you have the time and the ability to tailor into these, students that need whatever it is that they need, right? You're not splitting yourself over 25, 30 kids, you're splitting yourself over 10, 11, 12, 13 kids. So, that coupled with our ability to have the materials that they need, and the resources that they need, and the support staff that they need, it's frustrating to see these numbers again. We had this almost exact same conversation last year, and we got we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this, and yet our data has not yet borne out any great improvements, right? And so I will hold on another year. So that's 3 years of data
it's
that
fair
we'll
enough.
get. But at some point, we have to just say,
It's fair enough feedback, but I want to point out, right, like these systems and structures, Beth came on as an interim midway through.
right.
So like, and in all fairness to the teachers here, they went a good chunk of time without, right, and as the superintendent, right, leadership starts at the top, accountability starts at the top. So next year.
But you still know what your job is.
Right,
Yes.
but next year if we're but I think you have to set up like expectations, benchmark assessments, all those things that let you progress monitor. Say, wow, my kids in this class there's a big gap here about how we're finding text evidence. If you're not utilizing because there isn't an expectation, a system for doing benchmark, that's a problem. And so when I came, it was one of the things I said, well, and I came from an underperforming school, so we were assessing more than I could stand. We have no assessment tool. I said, so we don't have an assessment tool, then we get MCAS and we're like, hope we did great. Like there shouldn't be any surprise, right?
Absolutely.
A little bit of a surprise, but not a ton, because you've been doing benchmark assessments. And I think also this spring, not just in the union, but I've heard this up front in the superintendent's groups, MCAS became not a requirement for graduation, and we had more opt-outs than typical as a Commonwealth. And so people thought, well, they're not using it anymore. That's not true. Like, we're not using it as a high school graduation, but it's still how we get our report card. It is still important.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent I don't love high stakes testing, but it gives us data. It lets us know how are we doing. We need some sort of measure about if it's successful. So I think all of those things that you're saying are part of the urgency we're trying to foster.
Yeah.
And I want to say the teachers they're not thrilled with this data either, right? And they have had a lot of changes of procedures, like we're doing, they've spent tons of time in PD because we're doing a new benchmark assessment, and we have a new curriculum, and we're using the PRISM, taking advantage of the PRISM grant. And these teachers are spending a lot of time in PD and routines and expectations. So all of those things are in place, and they have been real partners with us in the work. They have not backed away from the work. They have not backed away from the hard conversations. And we all own a piece of it, right? Including here too. So
And let me just be
Attendance owns a
clear,
piece.
I am so happy to hear that there is going to be assessments in place and data meetings that we are checking in. I love that. And so I'm really, I'm encouraged by that. But, I just, at some point, we gotta just,
Right.
it
And
is.
actually-
And then Mark needs to talk because I've cut him off several times.
Sorry.
And I apologize.
I'm just going to go down through several points. One is probably my second job. The kids came in and we were responsible as a team to increase their testing scores by 3 years for every year they're with us. Because otherwise they're never going to catch up. So that's not new. My first teaching job was a long time ago. The second is a question about the data that we're presented with. It's grades 3 to 8,
Yes.
and we stop at 6.
So our data is only based on 3 to 6. The state bunches it in categories, which excludes the year that they have to, up until this year, test out, right?
So our data is only 3 to 6, but those are charts I get straight from the Department of Ed, so I can't modify them.
I understand that. I just wondered about validity, and I also, I know I came across fairly critical early on regarding performance here, and but I want to say very clearly that it comes down to leadership, and so far I've been very convinced that you're doing the right thing. So I'm not saying, I'm not putting it on you. I'm putting it on the lack of leadership that the school has had for several years prior. And from my viewpoint, not the teachers, but the leadership of the staff has been sorely lacking for about 3 years. But you're right. We've got to have some blue in there, you know.
Absolutely. And actually, to your point about leadership, I told Shannon today that I've completed an evaluation on all of my teaching staff, my paraprofessional staff, and I've done 6 additional second round observations of teaching staff in the building. And this is the first time many of my teaching staff have gotten feedback on their professional practice in years.
Yeah, that is, I believe that.
And so for all 54 teaching staff, which is paraprofessionals and teachers, to have already gotten the first round and to have begun the second round, and it is October 28th, that is, that is a clear change of practice in this building. And within each of those, I am talking to the data and the standards and what we are seeing and how we are moving children.
And that's a real disservice that's been done to our teachers.
Yes.
They are professionals and they should be getting feedback, and that is a lapse in leadership, to your point. So, and I don't want to belabor it because we're going to go on to the next steps, but to your point about, it really does start at the top with expectations, and so we have done a disservice that is showing up in the data, but we've done a disservice to our professionals working in the building by not providing feedback for them.
And we're changing that.
I have one more question.
Yes.
What is our opt-out rate? Do we have an opt-out number? Do you know?
We did not have opt-outs last spring.
Awesome.
We unfortunately did, however, have a couple of children who left in the middle of the day because they had dentist appointments and they had other things that they're scheduled. And so although I tried to explain to parents that they were not done and that this is going to be those scores that cannot be picked back up again tomorrow, and those will be zeroed out for their remaining questions, unfortunately. So I think we're trying to message to everyone that these are opportunities for us to show the growth that we've made, and it's very important that kids are physically here and that they are, staying and committed. I know that, one of the most exciting pieces for me was I had a little girl who was sitting in 3rd grade last year, and she just decided she was gonna pass no matter what it took. And she spent the day that she did the regular testing with the rest of her class, and then when everyone else was done, she picked up her little computer and sat in my office, and she had lunch with me, and then she proceeded to work and work and work all afternoon long. And it wasn't until maybe 10 minutes before the end of the day that she decided she was done, and she hit submit. And she did pass both ELA and math. And she did that for both ELA and math because in her mind, doing well was a priority. And so she didn't care that it was going to miss recess, and she didn't care that she was going to have to spend time while all the other kids were doing something else. She wanted to do her best work. And I think that that's a really great message that she's trying to send to herself about what she wants to accomplish as a human being long term, because she's saying, I'm willing to put the time and the effort in to get where I need to be. And I want all of my kids to see that as a message that they want to achieve. If they're going to, whether they want to study the veterinarian program at the Tech, which I think is incredible. And I think if you know anything about my love of animals, I'm going to tell you that having a vet pool is important to me. Or you want to go on and become an anesthesiologist, or you want to become a special education teacher here in Erving. The reality is that it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of time, and a willingness to say, I'm going to forego something to get where I want to be. And she was, for 4 days last spring, she was willing to forego recess. And let's be clear, I gave her recess on other days as a reward for putting so much effort in. But that's a pretty impressive thing for a 3rd grader. to make that commitment. Math. We have had an enormous amount of talk on math within the building. This is there really is, I'm going to actually speak to this in a different slide because there really isn't any other way to say our results here are just very disappointing. To say that we are at 56 progressing and that we are 10 points below the state average in meeting and then 8 points below at a 0 in exceeding is a tremendous concern. So I'm going to highlight instead what we're doing to address this. I'll come back to science in a moment. Actually, no, we'll do science and then we'll come back to the math piece in its sequence. Science was our one area of highlighting. We are higher than the state average in overall score by a point. So if we're at 495. It puts us within range of the 2019 numbers. We are at 41%, which actually is, if you're adding up the 34 and the 38, they're at 42%. So we are really on par with where they are. The biggest number here is that 6% is one student in 5th grade that did not pass. So this is actually an area where we can really look to and say, what is happening in our science curriculum that we are getting kids to engage and make real progress. And so that was part of our conversations. We have a number of action steps, and I'll talk a bunch about them, but we are doing data meetings, and these data meetings are about MCAS data, but they're also about DIBELS data, they're about STAR data. There are a number of points of leverage that we are looking at to try to determine where our kids are right now and how we have to support them to get them to move. And that's why, as you'll see when I do the school improvement plan, the members of the school council expected us to talk about and create individualized student success plans that had, Kelly Sykes written right on the top, and what is her data, and what is her attendance, and what does she need to move forward, so that each kid is being given that opportunity to be looked at as an individual human being, and then how are we supporting that child in moving them forward. Additionally, we are doing instructional practices book groups this year. I created the schedule to allow us to have book groups across multiple grades. I spent quite a bit of my summer reading 9 different instructional practices books, and I separated out the staff based on interest and availability, and we have 5 different groupings who are working on different topics, everything from teacher clarity to scaffolding to getting students to drive their own learning. And with each of those book clubs, we are digging into how are we teaching, what are we needing to do to improve based off of the best practices research in those topics, and then how do we use the content of those books to help and support us to grow as professional educators. And so every week staff are either meeting with me and having a book group, or they are getting an opportunity to sit and do reading or do an assignment related to one of the activities within the book. And that will go on all year long. We are exploring performance in connection to specific standards. One of the things that we targeted within math, and it's something that I will say I was very concerned about, and you'll see a chart on this later, we have gaps within the math curriculum that we were not teaching because it wasn't identified within the math curriculum. Unlike our ELA curriculum, we have 2 different types of math curriculum that we are using in the building, and those curriculums have been in place for a number of years, and so we were teaching the curriculum we had, but one of the biggest issues was, and I'll use, again, 5th grade as an example, where your son is now, the standards talk to being able to multiply 4-digit numbers by 3-digit numbers, doing division, 3-digit by 3-digit, 3-digit by 4-digit. And when you do those things, those are really complex algorithms for a student. Unfortunately, our curriculum didn't include either of those topics. And so by not including either of those topics, the students weren't taught either of those topics. And as a result, most of our students did very poorly on those questions. And it wasn't 1 or 2 questions. There were 8 questions.
But why is it that I'm going to be very sensitive to the fact that we have a very small school with
Yes.
single grades, right? So I'm not going to link it to any grade. Why are the teachers not knowing their standards? That is like the beginning. You teach the standards. The curriculum fits into the standard, but if the curriculum doesn't fit into the standards, you need to still cover those standards. So,
Right. So
how is it that
this is a leadership issue? It's something that I'm talking about with my staff now, and how I can support them, how we are spending our time planning to ensure the gaps within the curriculum are being addressed and that we're teaching it. So this is, from my perspective, if the conversation wasn't being had and we weren't digging into the data to see that existed, then that's a problem. And so now we are looking at this and we are saying, we know this particular standard doesn't exist well within the curriculum. We're going to make sure it gets fixed.
it sounds like that really across the board needs to be done is a
not just one grade.
reintroduction of the standards and
It's
a
not just one grade. You're
refresher of the standards. 'Cause,
And I think
you know,
looking at our curriculum, right? Why are we using, right? It's a bigger,
Absolutely.
like, we need to look at what are we, and again to the leadership issue. So what curriculum are we using and are we approving that isn't covering? Because in fairness to teachers, you come in, this is the curriculum we're using. It should be covered. I should be vetting that, or Lindsay. So I think that it's a bigger question. I don't know that it's just. It is not just a classroom. Right. There are multiple steps that need to be improved.
yes, but at the end of the day, the requirement is to teach the Massachusetts standards. So that should be the overarching. Whatever you're doing, it has to be meeting all of those standards. And so, good curriculum, not good curriculum. You do still have to meet those standards, even if your curriculum is not covering that. So yes, I hear you, but I think we're putting a lot of blame on the curriculum and not saying. But that's your job to know your standards and to make sure you're hitting them.
I think there are areas where, from the superintendent down, that can be improved.
And speaking to that end, one of the things that I spent a lot of time this summer with Lindsay doing was completely revamping how we use coaches in this building and what my expectations are around an instructional coach, what their schedule looks like and how that schedule is utilized to be able to support different grades. And they came in over the summer, they got PD around how to provide instructional coaching and what that looks like. And they have been pushing into classrooms and really providing a great deal of targeted support across multiple grades. So we're trying to use the resources that we have much more strategically than have been in the previous years. This is a good example of this, is that we pulled out the actual question by question standards and went through and said, you know what did we do on question 1 where we were at 79% of students succeeding and the state was at 71%? Or what did we do on question 4 where half of our students succeeded but only 24% of the state succeeded? And oh, by the way, can we please have a conversation about what happened in some of the questions where 100% of other schools were doing really well on something and we were sitting at 81? So there are some questions out there that really, should have been better, and we need to talk about what that looks like. We spend a great deal of time, and there's a question here. The state average was 62%. We were at 12. So when we dig into that and actually look at the question, that helps us to try to figure out why we didn't do well and what we need to do differently about how we teach. And it helps the teacher in the next grade up know what the gaps are that they have to close, so that when we're teaching that to that grade, we're filling in those gaps as well. And so one of the examples was we identified 5OA-A1, which is using parentheses and brackets. It's basically PEMDAS from back when we were all learning math. The example of the question that was given was 3 squared divided by A, and the students had to solve for that. One of the things that we then went and did is I identified all of the previous questions that connected to this standard. And our coach is providing math. For math, is providing access to this information to the teacher with examples, so that that kids we can both plan our instruction, but also kids can get a clear picture of what it means to be able to produce grade level work independently on a day. And so all of the different standards that we did poorly on, we're pulling them out and we're digging into them, and the coaches are working with our teachers to have that conversation across multiple grades. And it's not just this is your grade and this is what you need to do. It's you're in 6th grade now, and as a teacher, you're going to have to make sure that kids know the 6th grade content as well as the holes they had in 5th grade, so the holes don't impact our ability to be successful. The growth data, we had pretty consistently typical growth. We had some high growth in our lowest performing kids. That includes high need students and our low income students. So students, 57%, that's approaching that. The 60 is that magic number of exceeding for growth. 57 and 56, the state was consistently pleased with our ability to work with our low income and our high need students. And so I was excited about growth there. But overall, typical growth. In math, we were typical low growth across most categories except for low income. They considered 50% to be a typical high growth. So we were excited about that. That's 22 students that we were targeting there. And then I'm going to let special education talk about our special education data as well, because I know there's a lot that we're giving you access to tonight, and it's all stuff that we've been giving access to all of our teachers in this building and all of our our throughout the course of the last 2 months. As well as to our, by the way, we had, and I'm sure you saw it, our school council had they're confidential meetings. What do we went into executive session. That's the term I was trying to remember. We went into executive session so that our school council had access to this data from August on. And our conversations specifically hit on, we have to make changes because here is our data. That's why we're in executive session, because it's not ready to be public yet. What plans do we need to put in place so that we can improve?
You'll have to take over though.
I know.
The light standing in.
Yes, I know.
So,
I got my steps in
then you're going to
tonight.
take over the pushing.
We'll get that. Thank you. So as Beth was saying, she was really looking at all students across the board. That's her role as the principal. My role as the director of student support service. I really wanted to look at students with IEPs. I want to look at both their overall achievement as well as the gap between students who have IEPs and students who do not have IEPs. So just as a general reminder, the purpose of special education is to provide students with disabilities the accommodations and modifications to access the general education setting. And in the statewide assessment arena, the MCAS is that general education setting. So we're trying to provide access to students to be able to access this assessment. So the things that we are going to be looking at are comparing our students with the rest of the state, as well as our students to each other. And we want to look at what those gaps are so that we can work to close the gaps. Again, I pulled out our students from grades 3 through 6, but I put them all in a band together because we have such a low population of students with IEPs that I want to make sure that we can't identify any of those students. So if you take a look at this first slide, this is the MCAS achievement for ELA for grades 3 through 6. You can see the comparisons are students with IEPs here at Erving Elementary, students with IEPs across the state, students without IEPs in the state, and students without IEPs here at Erving, and we're comparing those to each other. So again, with achievement, that's how well a student performed overall on the test. Right now in ELA, we have 8% of our students who have an IEP are meeting the benchmark or above, and we have 69% of our students who are partially meeting the benchmark. We do have fewer students with IEPs in the not meeting category than students with IEPs across the state. And we do have, though, a gap between students with IEPs and students without IEPs at Erving, which is a 32-point gap in the meeting category. So we have a really big discrepancy there. So part of what we're going to be working on is certainly closing that gap moving forward. Go to the next slide, unless anybody has questions about this specific slide.
When these students that have IEPs, is this any IEP? So it could be speech articulation, it could be full multi
It could.
area IEP.
Yes. However, at our upper grade levels, those students who have only speech IEPs are very few.
For example,
Yes.
a more less severe IEP versus maybe a more comprehensive or involved IEP. They're
Yep.
all grouped together.
They're all grouped together. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
This is
This is math. Sorry.
Can I interject something? Sometimes here, it looks to me like the numbers are pretty small. And so the validity of what we conclude from them should be taken with a little bit of caution, because the numbers are really, particularly when if you go from this information and then you go look at individual students, you're like I say, the numbers are really small.
They are, for sure, and I think that it's interesting to compare to the state, but that's only sort of interesting. I don't know that it gives us a whole lot of information. I think the bigger piece is comparing students with IEPs to students without IEPs within Erving. I think that one of the things that special education aims to do is close those gaps between students with IEPs and students without. And so looking at the gaps, I think, is one of those things that we really should be looking to close. Here on the math, we have 27% of Erving students on IEPs who are in the meeting or above meeting category, and 67%. Am I in the right one?
Nope, 16.
Sorry.
7. No, you do this. Okay. I can walk around.
All right. Sorry. We have 17% of our students are in the meeting or above. I'm sorry, my notes are wrong. 17% are in the meeting or above, and we have 17% who are in the partially meeting but are not meeting category in math. For students with IEPs is at 67, which is a big jump. We do have more students in the meeting plus category, so we have 17% in the meeting plus versus the 14% in the meeting plus category across the state. So we're a little bit better than the state average there. Go back.
Oh, sorry.
And then the gap between students meeting IEPs who are on, the gap between students who have an IEP meeting the benchmark and students who don't have an IEP meeting the benchmark is 9. But if you look at that not meeting category, it's 53% of students. So there's a big gap there. It's a little more even across the other two, but there's a really big gap in the not meeting category.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay.
And so then this looks at growth, and growth is the progress towards proficiency over time. And so we can have students who are very low performing, but they have high growth, which means that those students are not yet at benchmark, but they're sort of on that right path towards making meaningful progress. This measures grades 4 through 6 because grade 3 only has had 1 year, so they can't show growth. The categories here are very low growth up to very high growth, and then there's a corresponding number band there. So in ELA, the students with IEPs overall had moderate growth. The same number of students had very high growth as very low growth. So we have a pretty big split there between the students and their growth percentiles. Students with IEPs from Erving had a higher growth percentage than students with IEPs across the state, and Erving students had the same growth percentage as students without IEPs across the state. So compared to the state levels, our growth is really good, and we're similar. We're close to the growth categories for Erving students. And then in math, students in Erving with IEPs demonstrated growth in the moderate category, and they had the same growth percentile as students with IEPs across the state. And they were a point higher growth percentile than students without IEPs across the state. So again, the growth really shows that we've got a lot of students that are right on track, but that haven't quite closed that gap yet. So our next steps really are, we're going to analyze the specific student growth and achievement data to see which students on IEPs are growing at a high rate, but not yet achieving benchmark. And the students who are demonstrating low growth and low achievement, those we really have to focus on changes to service or type of instruction. We really sort of need to overhaul things because they're not making growth or meeting achievement data. We're also going to be working on a higher level of integration in the general education setting for students with IEPs, and that way they're provided with the grade level instruction as well as the specific instruction that they receive from their special education services. So that's all I have. I don't know, Beth, if you have more.
Nope.
Or if anyone has questions.
Are there any different interventions planned other than the kinds of interventions that have been talked about so far? I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, but anything special that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so we have I have a professional development tomorrow with the all of the interventionists and the special education teachers. We have a series of professional development meetings planned, and this one is going to be specific about aligning those support systems from tier 1 to tier 3, which is from the general education setting to intervention to a lot more intervention. And so really focusing on making sure that what we're teaching in the general education setting is then being carried over to our interventions. And then we're also, we're looking at the student data, and we're also monitoring the data that we do at the benchmark level as well, so that we can see how students are making progress over time. So a lot of it is sort of looking at the data, monitoring, and then adjusting practice based on what the data is showing. It's a lot.
I mean, I'm really encouraged by the things that you've laid out as far as the interventions that you are both doing, Shannon and Beth, and Amy as well, to kind of address this ongoing issue that we've had with our test results. I'm happy to hear about the data meetings. I'm happy to hear that more observations are happening. I'm happy to hear that there's feedback being given. It definitely sounds like some PD on frameworks and the importance of adhering to the curriculum for the math STEAM frameworks standards. Are needed, or maybe just a review of the fact that those are actually what they should be teaching, and regardless of whether the curriculum covers it or not, that is the responsibility of them. So I'm encouraged by these things that I'm hearing. Do you have a sense of how long you think these interventions are going to take to bear out in some MCAS results?
I think that's a really hard question to answer right now, and I'm not trying to pass the buck, but we're really in, right? So we're diving into it stage.
Yep.
And that is a change in practice and how, the expectations, that every student has a success plan about where is this student going. And I think to your point about Erving has reset, that's the good part, right? Like we can do that with every student in this building because we do have all the pieces working together. Class size is smaller, resources are adequate to do that. So I think we'll have a better idea when we take our second benchmark assessment, because we've taken the first one, and so we're doing these things and we're doing progress monitoring and all the things that you typically do. But I think when we take that second benchmark assessment, which is about January, if I'm the
Yes.
dates right, I think we'll have a better idea about what, because those gaps are norm referenced across, to be typical across not just the state but nationally. I think we'll be able to see how quickly that's being impacted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to have realistic expectations. So if
So
we're
the state
thinking
says
2
meaningful-
years,
Yeah.
we're going to be able to by so basically this was year 1,
Yeah.
year 2, year 3, we're going to start seeing a whole lot different graph.
So I would think, so the state says meaningful, if you're a turnaround school, meaningful, which Erving is not, right?
Right.
We're not happy, but we're there, but they're not a turnaround school.
Yeah.
The state says that meaningful and high reaching growth is 3 to 5 percentage points in a year. So if we say we want to be closer to 5, and I'm just saying that's what they're saying, 5 percentage points, if that's right, aim high, then if we're at 42%, we're going to be aiming, right? Like, I mean, that's, to say you're going to make a 10% increase is not, it'd be wonderful, and but it's not reasonable.
Sure.
And it wouldn't, anything short of that would not say what you're doing isn't changing. It's just that you didn't get to 42% in 1 year, and you're not going to get out of it. But that being said, I would think that would be a reasonable measure. I would think, I don't want to be on the hot seat to me. You said 2 years, but I think you can see, I mean, they say a turner, to have that kind of, is about a 3-year process.
Okay.
But also keep in mind, you're not far from the state average, so it depends what you're measuring. If you're looking to be at the state average,
No,
I don't.
I'm,
right.
I am not looking
No,
at
but
doing
I'm
as a
saying,
state
I
average.
think it's what
No,
you're measuring. If you're looking
No.
to, geez, we want to be a district that is at
meeting.
eight-
How about
80%,
meeting?
Right. I think that will depend on a number of factors, and I'm not trying to pass buck, but it won't be a 1 year. I think I'll have a better answer for that when I can see what this assessment looks like about, geez, what do I think? If we had a 5% increase across the board, I would say what we're doing is working. Could it be faster than that? Absolutely. But I'm just trying to go with, what would I say? Okay, this is working. We have to stay the course. And then those gaps get smaller, right? So it's a lot easier to go from 5 to 10 than from 0 to 5 in that growth. So
Yeah, but I think it's important that we do have a timeline so that we can keep assessing our own interventions to say we are on the right track or we are not. So I think that's part of the problem that we have had in the past, is it's always just become kind of been this open-ended, like someday it'll get better. Like, no, like what is a realistic? Because then if we've year 3 and we're still not, then we really do need to have more conversations about what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
So I want to be realistic, but at the same time be clear on, our expectations and our timelines of things.
And is curriculum changing? Like, are we getting new curriculum?
I don't think it's that, and you can speak to. It's not that the curriculum was. There were
gaps.
gaps
There's going to be
Yeah,
gaps
so-
in
in any curriculum.
Sorry. There are going to be gaps in any curriculum, and a piece of the puzzle is that we need to know what the standards are, and
Because they're always going to be.
To be clear, I jokingly will say to people, I can quote math standards from kindergarten through 8th grade. I can't do that as well with the ELA standards. Not going to lie about that. I need to look those up and have a book with me in my hand. But the reality is that when we know the standards across all of the grades, we know where the gaps are going to be regardless of what curriculum we're using. And we're going to provide, the coaches are going to provide the support, and we're going to provide the lesson planning, and we're going to make sure that we are addressing it. The same way in ELA, we identified a problem in writing. And said that this is an area where we really have to work to change how we're doing. It's a point of leverage for us. And so across all of those grades, we are talking about how do we improve writing. And we're talking about it with samples, but the kids who are in grade 3 are seeing samples of what kids in previous grade 3 wrote, as well as release items from the state on what their samples of what a good essay looks like. But the kids in grades 4, 5, and 6 are seeing their own as well as what previous grade wrote. And it's an opportunity for them to make a big connection around, I'm not okay with getting a 2 out of 7 or a 4 out of 7. I want better than that for myself, and I can do better. And drawing the connection to, if I answer the actual question being asked of me, I get more points. If I provide, and by the way, and that was a big issue for us, is that we had a lot of kids we had several kids who wrote multiple paragraphs and referenced things in the actual reading and didn't answer the question asked of them. And so it was a 0. And we need to be able to have the conversation and be very upfront and honest and say, it isn't that you don't write well. It isn't that you don't quote the reading and provide evidence for your argument. It's that the question asked you about A, and you wrote about Q.
Yeah. Do you feel though that that we have the teaching tools that the teachers need, either the knowledge that they need, the curriculum that they need, whatever it is that they need, that they can then teach the mechanics of writing to those students?
So I do think that this district we have, particularly with the new prison grant money and all of the PD we're doing around that, and we had a phenomenal PD back in Shutesbury on the curriculum day. We had a wonderful speaker who really talked about writing development. I think we do have that in ELA. And I think the teachers are working very hard to implement that. I do think I have concerns about math for all of our grades. And I think that the fact that we have 2 different curriculums is concerning. But I am not at a point right now where I have enough data or evidence to be able to give you an answer regarding what our next steps are beyond simply saying, as a staff, we are working on identifying how to teach the standards with the resources that we have.
Yeah.
And we'll identify where the gaps in these resources are and identify what we need to do. I think you and I talked a little bit about going back into the curriculum closet and pilfering from prior curriculums and seeing what can we take from old curriculums and utilize to supplement the current curriculum we have. This is I got a resource for a couple of our grades as an intervention for some of our lower performing students called Tang Math, and it's a resource that allows you. It's a wonderful resource, and it's a phenomenal PD. But one of the things it allows you to do, it allows you to take the standard for the grade level, look at 2 levels below what that standard would look like, and a level above. So you get 2 levels below, and on, and a level above, and you're able to get kids, instead of taking them to where they are, you're saying to them, I need you to be able to engage, and we'll use 3rd grade multiplication as an example. I need you to be able to multiply a 2-digit number by a 1-digit number by the end of this year. That can be challenging for a 3rd grader because multiplication is new. It's a brand new standard in 3rd grade. But if we reteach it, and Tang talks about this, if we reteach it as I'm going to multiply the tens place and I'm going to multiply the ones place by that single digit number, and then I'm going to add that together, it allows an access point for a struggling learner. And it allows kids to find a different pathway through so that they can engage with grade level content, even if they are struggling with grade level content. And so that needs to be how we do this, is what are the ways we bridge the gap between where students are right now and the curriculum and expectations around grade level standards that the state and then our nation has set forth for that grade.
I don't have a lot to say more on this, but it just occurs to me that I always say there are a lot of people watching. I hope they are. It's their money and their kids. I hope people are watching, or they'll watch at another time. Whether it's a parent or a taxpayer, they should all be happy that we're not sitting here saying, well, the state standard's kind of failing. Yeah, we're doing okay. We're not doing that at all. We have a new leadership team in place. We have teachers being assessed for how are they doing, what results are they getting. Not that we're with a camera over their head watching everything they do, but how are your results? I mean, if some teachers are having great results and others are having horrible results, how do you fix that problem? And so the whole thing's being looked at to make these scores better. None of us are satisfied with them, and we're not just sitting here saying, "Oh, we're dissatisfied." It's a long discussion of how do you fix it, and that's what we're doing.
And I'm
it's
really
appreciated.
hoping, like to your point, Dan, I'm really hoping that we get a big turnout next Tuesday night for our family ELA night, and that we get a big turnout when it's math and when it's science. These are ways that we can partner with our families to be able to help our kids learn and grow. One of the things that I'm bringing in January is the I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's the inflatable planetarium, and the kids get to kind of climb in and they get to see the night sky, and there's a whole curriculum attached to it. The reality is that the night sky and the phases of the moon is a big chunk of fifth grade science, and
It's in other grade standards.
I was going to say, and it's in other grades too. And so giving every kid in the
talking my
building
bailiwick.
from pre-K
Yeah.
through 6 an opportunity to do that lesson. And I actually worked with the woman because I'm trying to write a grant for it. I said to her, I want you to provide me a follow-up lesson that I can do on our science night about the night sky on that night, so that parents can come in, they can see it, they can get a copy of the lesson, and that very night they could go home and stand outside in their driveway or in their backyard and point out to their child and make the connections right away. So we're trying to find ways to leverage how we build those relationships with our families. I would love to see as many people as possible coming in on these curriculum nights and being a part of this with their kids, because it'll help us.
I take 10 seconds for just a personal testimonial.
Yes.
Sixth grade here, when my daughter went here, we went to a planetarium in Amherst. I know it was sixth grade because she and her girlfriend went together. Still today, we wait for winter to come and we look up and say, "There's our friend Orion." It's been there for almost 50 years. These things, their kids remember, and it engages them. Right?
Yes.
I have all sorts of science thoughts and experience, and I'm just biting my tongue. I don't want to take a lot of time.
Thank you.
We've had long.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that report. I think we talked a lot about
lengthy,
things.
but there was a lot to go in,
Yep.
and that is going to be the data that drives a lot of things you're going to hear about over the course of the next. So hopefully it was lengthy, but it'll give you some reference point, and we will be more timely with our other reports around that. But it's important stuff, and I think that it's important that the community understands where we're at.
It's definitely a culture shift from every point, and I'm encouraged by it. So thank you.
I will also say that I looked through that report ahead of time and had all sorts of questions, and you've answered them all.
Oh, good.
You've answered my questions.
I do not have a pie report. If it's a link, if somebody wants to read it. Otherwise, we will table it.
Do you want to read the Erving educational report?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped that one. I cannot, but if somebody else
I
can,
have it if you want me to read it.
Is it something we can just kind of hit the highlights?
Yep. So an update that the collective bargaining agreement is signed. The president and the vice president are meeting regularly with the principal, and I join their meeting monthly, sort of like a joint labor management proactive sort of thing. Open house, which we talked about. If you go online, there's a link where you can see some pictures of how students were interacting. A highlight: fourth grade had 93% attendance at their open house, and so that was a big success. And I think those are the highlights, and they did have a link for some pictures, so we can certainly post that so people can take a look.
Great. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip that.
No, not at all.
And back to Pi. I do not have a report from Pi unless anybody else does. Okay, so that's like, do you know Pi? It's like
Yes,
the PTO.
absolutely.
Okay.
I've sat in a few meetings. Is Caitlin still
I
Caitlin
don't
and
know.
Brittany, I'll reach out to Caitlin and Brittany
Okay.
and see where we're at.
That would be great.
I know Jerry and I have helped with a couple things, but I would love to.
And even if they want to, if you're so willing, if they want to give you the report and then you can report on it, that's fine too.
Perfect.
Budget and personnel committee. We met. Shannon had referenced it in her meeting as well. Do we have a next? I can't remember whether we
do.
scheduled or not.
So they will meet on November 17th
okay.
to look at the budget proposal with the feedback from the committee. At
Oh,
the
that's
last
right.
time.
Before the joint supervisory
Right,
committee.
And so
Yep.
we will meet on that date right before the joint supervisory.
Yes. Now, as soon as you started saying
No
that
worries.
I recalled that conversation. So again, the next joint supervisory committee meeting is November 17th. Those are virtual. We do not. I'm not aware that we have any old business. We have none on the agenda. We have some new business. We have a handbook we need to review and vote. We have the blinds project that we referenced earlier in the capital planning, and then I have one that is not on the agenda that I'm going to add to our new business. So the handbook review and vote.
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Yeah, if you just want to quickly tell us the new things.
So there's nothing. We had made, you guys voted last spring.
Yep.
We had made the commitment to using it for this year. We wanted to get aligned with the other members of the union and start doing the votes in the fall instead of in May. So that is why it's being put up. There has been 0 changes.
Okay, so all the dates are up to date because
Yep.
you did them last time, right?
We did everything going
Okay.
into it in May. You guys voted on it, and our school council had presented it. So there is, it is. We are using it this year as is,
And then looking to make
and then we'll look to make any changes,
Get
and
any
then
feedback.
we'll
Okay.
be and then we'll be aligned to the other districts.
And that
within the
really was
union.
from me because I need some things to be consistent for me to be able to manage them. And so having everyone present school improvement plans in November, it just becomes much more manageable for me to be able to support principals
Sure.
than trying to keep track of which school's doing which thing.
Will the handbook be in September though?
It will
Next year?
typically be in September.
Okay, that's all I want is the as early as possible.
Yeah.
I was going to say on that I reviewed it even before I read your note saying it was already voted on, and I found a grammatical error, but I don't know where it is.
If you identify it, I would happily make the change.
That's
Yeah,
the
but I
good thing
lost
about
track.
living.
I have no idea where it is.
So now we just know it's out there somewhere.
It's out there somewhere.
All right. So a prize to whoever reads through it and finds it. So we're going to go ahead and vote on it again. We voted last spring, but just to be consistent for this year, we'll vote on it again for this current school year to be used. So I need a motion and a second to.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. So all in favor of voting on the handbook to be used for this school year?
Aye.
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 Great. The Blinds project. Okay, so we touched on this in our capital planning.
I do have the language. if
I
you-
do. Yep.
Okay.
So Brian has very kindly also given us the language with which to use to vote. And so basically what they found is they have a company that is willing to replace the blinds. It appears like under budget. Am I reading that
Yes,
correctly? Yeah.
the
So
town had voted for a $50,000 apportionment.
and their quote is coming in at $38,198.46. So a pretty significant savings to us, which is lovely. And so this company is CMC Shades and Specialties LLC out of East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. So somewhat local company. And so what we need to do is we just simply need to vote to move that process along so that they can start getting that underway. And so I will read the motion so that everybody understands, and then we will go ahead and vote. And then if there's any questions, we can, we'll motion, and then we'll ask if there's any other questions. So the motion is to engage CMC Shades and Specialties LLC of East Longmeadow, Massachusetts, under MHEC contract MC14-C04 for the window shade replacement capital project detailed in quote number 4493 in the amount of $38,198.46 and to further authorize Beth Gannon, our school principal, to be the signatory on that contract. So basically we're saying, yes, we want to move forward on that. We're going to allow Beth to go ahead and sign off on the contract and then move
Can
that
I
project.
move to approve everything you just read
Yes,
in that
you
statement?
can say as
Thank
read.
you.
Yeah. I won't. Thank you for not making me do that again.
I second that.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, Beth, you've been in contact with them. Oh, sorry. Thank you. And you're on board with this. It seems like it
Yes,
fits our
it will
needs.
happen over December. They came in, they did all the measurements. It will improve safety in the building as well as address non-working blinds. And they can do it over our December vacation.
Wonderful.
So
Excellent.
And is every exterior window?
exterior and those nice interior pockets there as well, which would allow for some improved safety
Love it.
within the building.
Yeah, so they have supply and install lockdown shades by School Safety Solutions at 51 locations, so 51 different windows, 108 hall.
Hallway.
Yeah, but I'm actually reading that it's the number. It's the name of the door is number 108. They're not 108 doors. The art room, the gym doors, the sensory room, the classroom side lights, hallway and exterior doors, computer lab windows, and then the hardware and things that go along with that. So that's why I was reading it as 108 doors, and I'm realizing in my head that can't possibly be it. It's number 108 as far as the building. So, anyways, so that is what we are voting on. Are there any other questions?
What color? No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Great. So you
Great,
can
thank you.
happily do that.
It's been a while. Been a long time coming.
Yes, it has. This has certainly been a project that we've been working on for a while. And then the new addition to the new business, I made you guys aware of this today. There was, for some reason in the past, there was a bylaw created that the representatives to the tech school and the Gilmontague Secondary School are appointed by the moderator, not by the school committee. And it's just kind of an odd, disjointed way to do that. And so the suggestion was made to ask for a warrant to be put on the next town meeting to change that bylaw to bring under the umbrella of the school committee that appointment. So when there's like we have right now, we have an opening on our school committee. We would go and meet with the select board and jointly appoint the committee member. But if there's somebody who wants to be the rep to the Gilmontague, they have to go to the moderator. So it just seems like a weird. Why are they going to the moderator? Nobody can really understand why. And so to just kind of streamline everything, the suggestion was made to have this bylaw changed and have them come under the umbrella of the school committee. So really what we need to simply just do is vote to create a warrant. And again, Brian is our town administrator is going to help word it so that I don't even have to come up with the correct wording for it. That we put that on the town meeting as a vote to the town, and hopefully get them to vote to agree to bring that back to a school committee job, if you will, not the moderator's job. So that's simply what I'm asking for us to do now, is to vote to create a warrant for the next town meeting to change the town bylaws to have the representatives to the tech school and the Gilmontague Secondary School appointed by the school committee.
I would move that we do that.
I would
Okay.
second that.
All right, thank you. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Wonderful. All right. That just didn't make it onto the agenda. Policy and review and update. We didn't have a policy meeting, so we're gonna just table that until November. We have we are going to table the executive session as well. And so our future business, our next meeting is November 18th. We will have policy committee meeting at 6:30 and our school committee meeting at 7 o'clock. That's our typical Tuesday. We did adjust this month, but next month goes back to our typical Tuesday meeting. And if no one else has anything else, we can adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your presentations. We really, again, we appreciated them.
You want to sign it?
Yeah. Yeah. Whichever one.